morning. Welcome to another Tuesday Think Tank. For those of you who haven't met me yet, I'm Olivier Lewis, broker owner of the Cranford office. So welcome Remax Tri-County, Remax First Realty, Remax First Realty 2, and Remax First Class in Middletown. So I am excited today to cover a topic that's come up a lot, which is sellers wanting to overprice listings, right? The market's shifting, which the shift is not a what, guys? Exactly, bingo. The shift is not a crash, right? But the market is shifting, and some sellers still think we are in a market that is appreciating by 13, 14, 15, 16% that we've seen in 2020 and 2021. Obviously, we're not appreciating at those rates. All of the forecasting from Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, NAR, NJAR, et cetera, is saying that the appreciation is going to slow down, but that does not mean we're in a declining market. It does not mean that we're losing equity or negative equity. It just means that the massive appreciation that we saw so fast happening is not going to happen. Forecasting for the next, who knows? No one can really guess, but we don't think that there's going to be that amount of appreciation again anytime soon, but we are still appreciating. Problem is, sellers saw the prices skyrocketing up and they want these high prices. Anyone here facing that now?
Yes.
Yeah, so they want these high prices. Let's start with this. Always start with trying to find out upfront what a seller is looking for. I know it's a tough question to ask for some, but it is always good to ask, what are your expectations on price? What are you looking to get for the sale of your home? What do you think the house is worth? Because you want to see where they're at, right? And then set the expectation on that we are on their team. We're aligned with you. The more we sell the home for, the more we make, the more you make, we're all aligned. We have a vested interest to get you the highest possible price. But once you know what they expect and you set the expectation with them that you're on their team, then it's really, and I use Carl's line all the time, on a scale of 1 to 10, how honest do you want me to be with you? And most people, I've had some people say 7s. Most people will say, a 9 or a 10, and they want you to be extremely honest and say, great, so I'm going to tell you what you need to hear and what the truth is versus what you want to hear to sell you, get you to sign up, and then later having to reduce the price or make adjustments to the price. So setting those expectations of framing the conversation that you're going to be 100% honest with them and you're going to be a 10 is something that you can use in the conversation and always go back to. But why it's important to ask how much they want for their home is so you can go back and talk about where did they get that number from? Where did that number come from? How do they have that expectation? Is there a reason? Do they have comps to support it? Are they comparing it to, they have an average home, or they're comparing it to a brand new construction that's sold on their block or in their neighborhood, right? And sometimes you can easily explain that your house that's built in 1960 or 1940 does not compare to a house that's built in 2022. But if you don't ask what their price is, and then you can't find out where they got that idea from. So that's a real objection that it's better to address up front and ask the question, what are your expectations on price? What are you looking to list the home for? What do you think the home is worth? And then, of course, uncover where they got that from and why. Because if you don't, you come up with a value, they have this value in their head, and there's a massive disconnect, and they can't see it because you don't know how to explain where they went wrong or what they're doing that doesn't really work and is not how it works. So ask their price, try to find out where they got that price from. And one easy thing to do is just remind the sellers, because almost every seller, a high percentage in the 90 percentiles, in my opinion, I don't have a fact around it, but almost every seller got a mortgage when they got the house. Do you guys agree? Mm-hmm. So if they got a mortgage, what did they get when they got a mortgage?
Appraisal.
Bingo, an appraisal. So just explain to them and walk them through the process that an appraiser uses. Now, of course, we're not appraisers. We're not giving them an appraisal, but we use the same process, which are comparable sales in the last 6 months as close to the house within half a mile or a mile, et cetera, right? And when you say, hey, Mr. Seller, when you bought this house, do you remember having to pay the bank to do an appraisal? and they're going to say, yeah, the bank made me pay for someone to do an appraisal, say, well, that's how we determine the value, and we follow the same process. So we're going to compare apples to apples and really follow the same guidelines appraisers use. So with that, that's how we're going to come up with the value together and walk them through it. And sometimes that little bit really helps them understand that you didn't just slide over 3 printouts. You didn't just come up with a value. You're not discrediting all the work that they've done, all the money that they've put in. You're just following a process of guidelines, which they followed as well when they bought the home. But we don't really explain that. And we say, no, it's worth 500, not 550, because the comparable sales, but they don't know what comparable sales are, right? That's our jargon. Those are our terms. I don't think many of us prior to being licensed knew comparable sales and how it works, but we spit that out at a seller and expect for them to like, oh, okay, that makes sense. You really have to put it in their terms, meet them where they are. They're not us. They don't know these terms. But when you talk about, hey, did you have to pay for an appraisal? Everyone remembers what they had to pay for.
Yeah.
So once you walk them through that, that's how we determine value, and we follow the same process. That usually helps them understand where we're getting our numbers from. Then, of course, again, show them the market data that we are in a shifting market. Not that they missed a window. You don't want to scare them. You don't want to be doom and gloom that the market's tanking or crashing, et cetera. But just explain that it is shifting. The demand is still there, but with the rates rising, with the rates rising and the fact that there's not enough inventory for the demand, a lot of buyers are coming out of the market or sitting the sideline or just going to wait until they can find what they want, or they're priced out because their mortgage payment was, their approval was 400 for them to be in a certain price point with the mortgage payment. And now because the rates are 6 or whatever they are day to day, that mortgage payment is no longer there. It's much higher. So now they have to spend less money to keep themselves where they want to be financially. So with that, buyers are not willing to be as aggressive as they have in the last 2 years with bidding 20, 30, 40, 50, $100,000 over the price. So once you explain that to them in the market shift, it's still a great time to sell, of course, because we're at an all-time high. But who knows what the future will bring if rates continue to go up, if that will have more of a negative impact on pricing. So obviously it's a great time to sell, but there's not going to be this massive appreciation that we saw, which was spiking prices up. And that's what sometimes propels people to just raise their price by 50 grand, or the neighbor sold for 4, I want 450 because my house is nicer. But we're not in that market anymore. We're shifting to more of a normal market. But explaining that to them, that really helps the impact of the rates. I like to, when a seller wants to overprice homes, I like to talk about their motivation. You want to get to Florida, you want to get to California, you want to go to Aruba, great. My job is to get you there, not just put this on the market, but to actually sell it. And here's what happens if we overprice. If we overprice the home, it expires. And if you're doing this with your laptop, with your iPad, if you have some technology with you, you can actually pull up the MLS and just hit expired, search for the last year, and a ton of them are going to come up. Obviously, in this market, less than 2-3 years ago, but there still will be expired. And you could say these X's mean expired. These homes sat on the market, did not sell. These sellers could not get to Aruba, California, Florida, wherever they were looking to go, upgrade or downsize their homes because they overpriced it. Agents don't really talk about expireds and what happens if you overprice it. But once you can paint the picture for them, right? Once you can paint the picture and let them see what happens, it hits home that my goal is to sell this, not just put it on the market. So I like to really show them with my laptop, log into the MLS. I don't print them out ahead of time, but when we're going back and forth on pricing, I will show them what happens if you overprice. You will have an expired listing. But then anyone ever get the objection, well, I don't want to price it too low? Anyone ever get that from the seller? I don't want to price it too low? Well, I'm just making sure volume's still up. If you get the objection, I don't want to price it too low, it's easy to respond to that and say, we can't really price it too low because one, we're using the same process appraisers use to come to the value. And two, what happens when you price a home below value?
You get multiple bids.
Multiple offers, multiple bids, and the market corrects itself, right? And that's what happens. So you can actually demonstrate that to the seller that here's a home listed at 500, it bid up and closed at 540, 560, 550, whatever the number is.
Mm-hmm.
But there's in this market with our comps, there are dozens and dozens of these examples. So if you show that to the sellers, what's going to happen is they're going to realize time after time, if we price it below market or not as aggressive as we should be, the market corrects itself and the price goes back up to where it should be, what the market value is. So I like to say we can't really underprice stuff because the market's going to correct itself. Now that doesn't mean the house is worth 500 listed for 4 on purpose. No, because there's no guarantee you're going to get right back to the 5. But if you pull proper comps and you could be off $10,000, $20,000, just sometimes it's hard to get an exact, well, the market will adjust itself and we will overbid. So now that you cover overpricing and expiring and not pricing it aggressively and you get multiple offers, the seller should have a better understanding of how the market reacts. It's either going to sell, expire, or expire, right? And if it sells, you're going to have multiple offers and it's going to sell over. So that's how you explain pricing, overprice, and obviously pricing it below. And you want to just touch on what happens with chasing the market down. You don't want to be that house that starts at 600, that goes to 575, then goes to 550, because the buyers look at it as you're desperate to sell, you're extremely motivated, you priced it wrong, there's urgency because you keep dropping the price, and they can get a deal. That doesn't help you get to your number. You're better off pricing it right out of the gate, getting multiple offers, shooting the price back up, getting it under contract and sold versus sitting on the market and doing price reductions. I've always told sellers, you don't make money by sitting on the market. You do not get more money by sitting on the market. Now, this past market's been a little different, but realistically, more days on market, 60 days, 90 days, 120 days, you don't make more money by sitting there. People look at it as stale, etc. So once you explain that and tie that in with the expireds, I think that really helps. And a couple things, I'll give you guys a story. One of our agents listed a house, I want to say 2-3 weeks ago at 1.3 in Westfield, which we covered it, and I think it should have been priced at $999, just because it's on a busy street, doesn't have a master suite. There's a couple, there's 1 or 2 functional obsolescence factors of the home, and got a $100,000 price reduction, but it's still overpriced. And now, how do you get the seller back down to reality when the seller insisted on 1.3, even though we advised them 999, avoid the luxury tax, let it bid up, or 1.1, which is probably where it should have been at the beginning. And it's going to be tough, right, to get the seller down 200 grand to where they need to be. But one of the things, it's Kareem, one of the things we looked at is taking the seller to go look at what the competition is at 1.2, 1.1, etc. And we came up with 2 or 3 new construction homes starting at 999 to 1.2. So it should be very easy to take the seller to 3 new constructions and show that, hey, for the same price or less, we can get brand new construction, doesn't have the functional obsolescence that your home has. It's not on a busy street. And what would you do? What do you think a buyer is going to do? Right? And sometimes it does come to that where you have to physically take them. Comps don't always work. Sliding the paper across the desk, even if you have your iPad or laptop, going through pictures does not always work. A lot of times you have to physically show them, right? They need to see it in person and do a apples to apples comparison. But when you do that, and I've done it about 3 times in my career where I couldn't get a seller down, we couldn't agree. They didn't dispute, I was doing everything I can, but just couldn't agree on price. Taking them to see the comps and having them face the reality that these homes are better, that usually gets them where they need to be and accept the facts and reality, especially when you have new construction priced the same or lower than a house that's updated. So that's another strategy. And last but not least, do we take an overpriced listing? Should you take an overpriced listing? Feedback?
Well, you said, yeah.
I think
Yes.
It's a margin, right? Like if they're too far gone, like 200K, let's say, then no. But
Yeah.
if they're like 50 grand or 100.
Exactly. Well said. Within reason, it has to make sense. You have to have the expectation that if we don't sell, if we don't get the number, if we have no activity, if we have no offers, we need to make an adjustment. I don't like saying reduce or drop the price because people feel like they're losing, but I say we need to adjust the price. Same thing, just maybe play on word for some people psychologically, that may help. But yes, should you take it overpriced? Especially in this market, yes. A couple reasons why. One, anyone see a listing go up and say, no way that's going to sell at that price. And then it sells at that price, right? Anyone have a deal that they put under contract, like this is not going to appraise, there are no comps, and it appraises. Does that happen to everyone in here?
Yeah.
Exactly. So you don't know, especially in this market where buyers are waiving appraisal contingencies, buyers are paying out of pocket the difference, appraisers are being generous, right? So that's one reason. The other reason is, yes, after you do list it and it's overpriced, 30, 40, 50, 60 grand, whatever it is, can you get them to adjust once they get the feedback? Yes, more than likely, if you set the expectation up front and you demonstrate to them what you've done, what you're doing, and all the feedback from the showings, all your efforts, if they see undeniably that you are pushing and doing your best to market the home and bring people there, and if they see that there's 10 appointments, 15 appointments, 20 appointments, and there's no offers, it's an easy conversation to say, guys, you can't ignore the feedback. You can't ignore 20 people have come in, but not one person's written an offer. And it all comes down to price. I can bring another 20, and if we get no offers, that doesn't help you, right? And then it becomes stale. So I think in this market, it does make sense to take over price within reason. Like Ariel said, not 200,000 over. There's a fine line where maybe, you may have to walk away from it. Walking away isn't the end of the world because sometimes it's better to be the second agent. It's sometimes better to let someone list it 150 grand over, 100 grand over, and the seller's not going to budge. Absolutely not. I don't need to sell it. And when it expires, you circle back. Let them face the reality of the market that their number was not achievable. It was unrealistic. They have better odds winning the lottery, right? Let them face that. And then you come in as the knight in shining armor that sells the home because now it's priced right. And this happens all the time. You see a listing expire or get withdrawn, then you see it relisted and it's 50 grand less, and then boom, it sells. And who gets all the credit? The second agent. All they did is price it right. And now the seller's more willing to price it right because they sat on the market and it didn't sell. So keep that in mind, guys. That's the process of working with and trying to get a seller to come down to reality of where the market should be. Any questions, feedback on sellers that want to overprice? No, everyone's sellers are listening to them on pricing?
No.